Hello friends, I am glad to see you again. Today I'll talk about the HOA that wants me to open its gates at night. By the time my phone lit up for the 20th time at 3:07 a.m., I was so far past annoyed that I just lay there staring at the glowing screen, watching it buzz across my nightstand like a possessed beetle. Same caller ID every time. Community Association Office, the Homeowners Association. Again. I live at the very end of a private drive behind an automatic gate. The gate is on my property. I bought the land, pulled the permits, paid for every bolt and hinge and the concrete the posts went into. I maintain it, insure it, and according to the county plat map, the asphalt right up to the gate is mine. The HOA, however, had decided somewhere along the way that my gate was actually their gate. It started out as mildly annoying. It eventually became harassment. That night at 3 a.m., with my phone on its 20th call, it became the beginning of their nightmare. Because here's the key detail they never really bothered to understand. I'm not just a homeowner here. I'm the owner of the gate, of the drive behind it. And thanks to some paperwork they never read, I was not actually a member of the HOA they were trying so hard to control me with. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This whole mess started 2 years before the 3 a.m. incident, when I closed on what I thought was my dream property. It was an odd flag lot at the back of a subdivision. The main neighborhood is typical planned community. Sidewalks, a little playground, a pool, and a clubhouse that smells like old coffee and chlorine. My lot is a long stem that runs off the main loop, then opens up into a big wooded rectangle. The developer originally kept it separate from the association. It was intended as the estate lot sold later, or turned into something special. Then the market dipped, plans changed, and I got it for a price that felt like a typo. The title company pointed out something I barely paid attention to at the time. My parcel was not subject to the association's declaration. I had an easement over the private road, and that was it. No assessments, no architectural control, no HOA rules. I even had a separate trash pickup agreement directly with the county. My real estate agent, a guy named Rowan, who always smelled a little like sawdust, leaned over the paperwork and tapped that clause. "Good for you," he said. "You get the benefit of the neighborhood without the board breathing down your neck." I nodded, filed it mentally under nice perk, and moved on. I've rented in places with associations before. I knew they could be annoying, but I wasn't prepared for what board members with too much time and too little power can turn into when they think you're one of theirs. About 6 months after I moved in, the harassment started. It wasn't obvious at first. It was little stuff. Flyers left on my door about mandatory yard cleanup days. Emails forwarded from a generic HOA address about pool key replacements. A glossy newsletter with a smiling picture of the board president talking about our wonderful gated community. The gate in the photo, my gate. The same gate the board had never contributed a penny to. To understand why my gate mattered, you have to picture the layout. The subdivision has a main entrance off a fairly busy street. No gate there, just a stone sign with the community name and some shrubbery that is always half dead. That's how everyone has come and gone since the first house was built. My private drive branches off the loop near the back between two properties. The easement is in my deed. I can use their road to get to my land. They and their guests can use the easement section of my drive to turn around, walk back there, whatever. It's pretty standard. When I bought the place, the drive was just a cracked asphalt strip with no lighting. I work odd hours in tech, often late at night, and I like feeling secure at home. So I installed an automatic gate just inside my property line where the easement ends. It has a keypad, a clicker, and an intercom with a camera that pings my phone. I talked to the county, got permits, and confirmed I wasn't blocking any public right-of-way. It was my gate on my dirt at the end of my easement. The HOA board did not love that. The board president, a woman named Marla who dressed like every day was a casual Friday at a bland office, knocked on my door a few weeks after the gate went in. She had a clipboard and a tight smile. "Hi, I'm Marla. I'm the president of the community board," she said. She didn't offer a handshake, just let her eyes do a slow sweep of my front porch like she was grading it. "Hey," I said. "I'm Theo. I've lived here long enough to know that giving them my first name and no more is the safest option." She cleared her throat. "I wanted to talk about the gate. There are procedures for putting up structures like that. You need board approval. I already had a copy of my survey and the HOA declaration in a folder by the door because I had a bad feeling something like this would happen. I reached over, grabbed it, and handed her the page. "My parcel isn't in your declaration," I said, "and the gate is on my side of the line." I made sure of it. She scanned the document, frowned, then smiled in that way people do when they decide to plow ahead regardless of reality. "Well, even if you're technically separate, your gate impacts the community," she said. "We've decided to adopt it as a community gate. For security, you'll need to give us a master key and access code for the system." I almost laughed. I thought she was joking. "You've decided to adopt it?" I repeated. "We're a gated community now," she said, and I realized she actually believed this. "We're marketing it that way. It's a huge selling point for home values. We have to be able to open the gate if there's an emergency or if someone forgets their code." I kept my voice calm. "There's still the main entrance," I said. "That's how emergency services get in. If they need access down here, they can use the call box and I'll open it. But I'm not handing out keys to my private gate." Her smile slid off her face like a cheap sticker. "That's not how this works," she said. "You can't just block community access." "I'm not blocking community access. I'm controlling access to my property. That's kind of the whole idea of private ownership." She stared at me, then snorted like I was a kid with an answer she didn't like. "We'll talk about this at the next board meeting," she said. "You'll be hearing from us." And I did. I started getting emails, all from the Community Association office address. First, they were friendly reminders that I needed to provide an access key. Then they were formal notices that I was out of compliance with community security standards. Finally, they were violation letters threatening fines. Every single one of them referenced sections of rules that did not apply to me, because again, my parcel is not in their documents. For months, I wrote calm replies explaining that attaching the same single-page excerpt of the declaration with the exceptions section highlighted. No one read it, or if they did, they decided they didn't care. They also never actually sent me a bill for dues until that spring when they hired a management company. Suddenly, I started getting monthly statements for regular assessments, along with late fees for amounts I'd never been billed for. I figured it was easier to pay the couple hundred a quarter than to fight, so I did. That was my first big mistake, which becomes important later. Meanwhile, the gate drama got weirder. One of the board members, a guy named Trent who worked in sales and drove a truck bigger than my first apartment, liked to bring his friends over to drink at the cul-de-sac near my easement. A couple of times I caught him walking up to my gate with people in tow, gesturing at it, bragging like he'd personally installed the thing. "We're private back here," I heard him say one afternoon when I had my windows open. "All this is gated. The board locks it at night." I stepped outside and leaned on my porch railing. "Hey, Trent," I called. "It's my gate, and it's not a common area." He waved like we were best friends. Yeah, you're good. Just showing them the amenities." I kept my temper. I thought maybe once they realized I wasn't rolling over, they'd back down. I didn't want drama with people I had to see walking their dogs. The turning point came about a year in, when the board quietly started listing the neighborhood in online listings as a secure gated community, access through owner-controlled rear gate. That rear gate was my front gate. How did I find out? One of my neighbors, a retired teacher named Miss Alora, came by with her tablet. "The listing for the house across from me is saying something interesting," she said, eyes twinkling. "You may want to look." There it was. Photos of the house, the playground, the pool, and then a glamour shot of my gate, the camera angle clearly taken from just outside my property line. I was irritated but still not fully angry. I took screenshots, sent yet another email to the board, and told them to remove all pictures of my gate from their marketing. No response. I even sent a message through the real estate website to the listing agent, explaining that he didn't have permission to use a photo of my property in his ad. He replied, "The association told us the gate is theirs. Take it up with them." So I did. I typed one last, very direct email to the board. "You do not have permission to represent my gate as a community facility or to demand keys or codes. It is on my privately owned land, which is excluded from the declaration. Any further misrepresentation will be treated as harassment and trespass. Please confirm in writing that you understand this." They did not confirm anything in writing. Instead, they called me 20 times at 3 a.m. on a Saturday. That night, I went to bed late. I do freelance work with a company on the West Coast, and our meeting had gone long. It was close to midnight when I finally turned the lights off. My phone was plugged in on my nightstand on vibrate. I'm a light sleeper, but usually if I'm exhausted, I can sleep through almost anything. The first call buzzed at exactly 2:48 a.m. I fumbled for the phone, squinted at the caller ID, and saw Community Association office. I let it go to voicemail. My half-asleep brain figured it was some automated thing that would stop. It didn't. 2 minutes later, another call, then another. By the fourth one, I answered mostly to say, "Stop calling me." "What?" I croaked. A wall of noise hit my ear, music, laughing, someone arguing, and over it all Marla's voice, shrill and furious. "Why is your gate locked?" she demanded. I sat up. "Because it's a gate," I said. "And it's the middle of the night? We have people out here who can't get in," she snapped. "The code isn't working. You need to come open it and give us the physical keys, right now." I swung my legs out of bed, not to get up, but because the adrenaline spike was so sudden it made me queasy. "Where are they trying to go?" I asked. "Because the main entrance is open. The rear access is more convenient to the clubhouse," she said, like that explained everything. "We told everyone for the wedding party to come through the gate by the back. They're stuck. Your gate is blocking the way." I blinked into the darkness. "You scheduled a wedding and directed guests to use my private gate without asking me," I said slowly. "The community gate," she corrected. "And we've asked you repeatedly for keys. This is exactly why. You're required to cooperate with the association." Something in my brain clicked. I reached over and tapped the record button on my phone. I live in a state where you can record conversations you're a party to without telling the other person. I hadn't needed that knowledge in my personal life before, but right then it came in handy. "I'm not required to do anything for you at 3 in the morning, I said. "You have a main entrance off a public road. Use that." She made a sound that was almost a growl. "There's no parking left up there," she said. "They've already parked along the back street. We need them to come through your gate." "Then you need to figure out why the code isn't working," I said. "Because I didn't give you one, and you don't have permission to route your party through my property." "We can and we did," she snapped. "You're being unreasonable. If you don't come open this gate, we will fine you for non-compliance with community security protocols and interfering with association activities." I was fully awake now. The absurdity of the threat, combined with the fact that she had woken me up multiple times for something this ridiculous, finally flipped the switch from annoyed to done. "You woke me up in the middle of the night because you told a wedding party they could use my gate," I said. "You're not just being unreasonable, you're harassing me. Do not call me again tonight. Use your own entrance like every normal neighborhood does." I hung up. They called back immediately. I hit decline. They called again. Decline. They called from a different number. Decline. They called and called and called. I stopped picking up. I just let them stack the calls on my log, each one time-stamped. I disabled the ringer entirely. My phone vibrated angrily against the nightstand for another 10 minutes, then finally fell still. I went to the window and looked out. I could see the glow of headlights near the gate, silhouettes moving around. I watched 2 people in formal clothes walk up to the keypad, jab at it, gesture in frustration. I thought about going out there just to tell them it wasn't their fault, but I knew if I cracked my front door, Marla would take that as some kind of victory. So I went back to bed. In the morning, there were 20 missed calls, 4 voicemails, and 6 texts from the HOA number. The voicemails were mostly Marla saying some variation of, "You need to cooperate with the board," and "This is not optional." One of them helpfully included Trent in the background telling someone, "We're going to fine him so hard for this." The texts were shorter but just as charming. "You are required to open the gate. Your non-compliance is being documented. Your refusal interfered with association activity." All of these came after I told them not to contact me again that night. I saved everything. I made coffee, sat at my kitchen island, and started a folder on my computer called HOA Nonsense. I dragged in screenshots of the calls, saved the voicemails and texts, and added the recording of my call with Marla. I made a simple text file and started typing out every interaction I could remember with the board, with approximate dates. Halfway through my second cup of coffee, there was a knock on my front door. Loud, angry. I checked the camera. It was Marla and Trent, both looking like they had not had much sleep. Behind them, I could see a few stragglers from the night before, still in wrinkled dress clothes, picking their way back to their cars along the curb. I opened the door but left the screen door locked. "Morning," I said, more cheerful than I felt. "Still having gate problems?" Marla's eyes were bloodshot. "We need your keys," she said, skipping any attempt at niceties. "This is out of control." "Good morning to you too," I said. "No, you can't have my keys." Trent stepped forward, puffing himself up. "Look, man," he said, "we had an agreement about using the back entrance for events." "We did not," I said. "If you have something in writing with my signature, I'd love to see it." Otherwise, what you had was a fantasy. Marla shoved a piece of paper against the screen like she was serving me a summons. This is your violation notice, she said. You are being fined for non-compliance with community security and obstruction of association functions. You're also required to provide a key and access code for the gate by the end of the week. I glanced at the letter. It was on association letterhead, signed by her as president. It cited several sections of rules and regulations that again did not apply to me. The total fine was $300. I smiled. Okay, I said. She blinked. Okay, she repeated, thrown off by how easily that came out. Okay, I said again. Thank you for putting this in writing. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and snapped a picture of her holding the paper against my door. What are you doing? She snapped, jerking her hand back. Documenting, I said, just like you. Her mouth flattened into a tight line. You are playing a very dangerous game, she said. The association has rights, you know. We can put a lien on your property. We can send you to collections. We can make your life very difficult. You've already tried to make my life difficult, I said calmly. You've woken me up multiple times over something that doesn't involve you. And last night you harassed me 20 times in the middle of the night. That's not just annoying, that's a pattern of behavior. Now you're escalating with baseless fines and threats. I've been patient and tried to explain the deed situation to you. You've ignored all of it. Trent snorted. You think you know more than our manager? This whole subdivision is under the association. That's how these things work. Then it'll be really interesting when someone reads the documents and sees the section where my parcel number is explicitly excluded. I said, I'm done arguing about this with you on my porch. If you want to keep this up, you can do it through my attorney. That got their attention. You have an attorney? Marla said. I do now, I said. And as of this moment, I'm asking you not to come onto my property, not to contact me directly, and not to route any more of your events through my gate. Any future issues, put them in writing and send them to the address you have on file. My attorney will respond. You can't just, she started. I closed the inner door gently and locked it. They stood there for a minute, probably deciding whether to keep knocking, then finally walked away. As soon as their car rolled out of view, I went back to my laptop and opened a browser. I searched for real estate attorney common interest communities and started making calls. On the third try, I got a human on the line who listened to the outline of my story and said, yeah, that's worth looking into. The attorney's name was Karina. Her assistant set up a consultation for that Tuesday. Bring everything you've got, she said. Documents, letters, emails, recordings if you have them. I looked at my HOA nonsense folder, which already had a small, angry little collection of files in it. Oh, I said, I've got things. Over the next couple of days, the board kept up their side of the pattern. I got 2 more letters, one from them and one from the management company, repeating the same threat about fines and further legal action. They started copying a generic collections email address on their messages like that would scare me into compliance. They also tried to be petty. I had a landscaper scheduled to come trim some of the trees overhanging the drive, and he texted me from the main road. Hey man, there's a couple people out here saying I need special authorization to go back to your place, he wrote. I went out to the front of the subdivision. Sure enough, there were Marla and Trent, standing in the middle of the loop road in their best, we're just checking IDs stance. He's not allowed back there, Marla said as soon as she saw me. We don't have his insurance on file. He hasn't been vetted. He's got insurance, I said. And you don't have jurisdiction over my vendors. He's working on my property. Trent folded his arms. All workers have to check in at the clubhouse, he said. Security policy. Show me where that applies to my parcel, I said. They opened their mouths. I opened my phone and started recording video. Please step aside and stop interfering with my contractor, I said clearly. You are not authorized to restrict access to my property. Their faces shifted when they saw the phone. They stepped aside, but Marla muttered, We'll be adding this to your file. I smiled into the camera. Please do. Behind them, my landscaper, a guy named Jace, who has seen a lot of nonsense in his line of work, gave me a sympathetic look and rolled his eyes. Man, he said later, trimming branches like they were the association's nerves. I thought the association where my mom lives was intense, but this is a whole different level. You sure you don't want to sell and move? Not yet, I said. I want to see how this plays out. Tuesday rolled around. I put on a collared shirt because I still have an outdated sense of how one should dress to see professionals, grabbed a binder with all my printed documents, and drove to Karina's office. She was younger than I expected, maybe late 30s, with sharp eyes and a manner that managed to be both blunt and reassuring. "Okay," she said once I'd given her the short version. "Start from the beginning. Don't leave anything out. I'll stop you when I need a document." So I did. I told her about the purchase, the clause excluding my parcel, the gate installation, the first confrontation with Marla. I described the emails, the fines, the marketing photos. When I got to the 3 a.m. phone call, I slid my phone across the desk. "I recorded this," I said. "I'm pretty sure I was allowed to." She nodded. "You're in a one-party consent state," she said. "You're fine. Let's hear it." We listened to Marla's call together. Karina's eyebrows climbed higher and higher. When it got to the part where Marla demanded my keys and threatened fines, she actually laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. "Wow," she said when it ended. "She really did you a favor there. By waking me up and threatening me," I asked. "By putting all of that on tape," she said, "and then sending you written fines afterward. This is textbook overreach. They're treating you like a member when you're not. They're using your property as a selling point without your permission. They're harassing you with repeated contacts, including in the middle of the night. And they're interfering with your contractors. That's multiple potential claims. I just want them to leave me alone," I said, "and stop using my gate like it's theirs." "That's the easy part," she said. "The more interesting part is the dues." I frowned. "What about them?" She flipped to a copy of my assessment statements that I'd printed for her. "You've been paying," she said, "even though you didn't have to, for over a year. That's money they've collected under false pretenses. Depending on how this shakes out, we might be able to argue for not just a refund, but damages under consumer protection laws. And if they've been representing your property as subject to the declaration when it's not, that's misrepresentation to third parties as well." I blinked. "I was just trying not to rock the boat," I said. She smiled. "They already rocked it," she said. "You've just been hanging on politely." She scribbled some notes on a pad. "Here's what I recommend," she said. "First, I'll send them a formal cease and desist letter regarding contact, harassment, and misrepresentation. We'll lay out that your parcel is not subject to their authority and that they have no right to demand access to your gate. We'll demand that they stop using images of your gate in their materials and that they retract the fines. Second, I want to request a full accounting of all dues you've paid and how they've used them. Third, I'd like to give them an opportunity to resolve this amicably before we file anything. But if they're as stubborn as they sound, we'll be prepared to file a complaint in court and possibly with the state agency that oversees common interest communities." I felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. "Isn't that going to make them angry?" I asked. She tilted her head. "They're already angry," she said. "The difference after this is they'll also be scared, because they'll finally realize they are the ones who have something to lose." I sat with that for a second, then nodded. "Do it," I said. She smiled and held out a pen. "Sign the retainer," she said, "and send me copies of every new thing they send you. Don't respond to them directly anymore. That's what you're paying me for." On the drive home, I felt lighter than I had in months. The board had been this constant, low-level buzzing in the background of my life, like a mosquito I couldn't quite swat. Handing it over to someone who knew how to deal with it felt like finally finding the fly swatter. Of course, the board was not going to go quietly. If anything, the 3 a.m. call and my mention of an attorney flipped a switch in them too. They just picked the worst possible way to respond. Because instead of backing off, they decided to escalate. And in doing that, they set themselves up for the kind of consequences they never imagined when they stood at my front door and told me they could make my life difficult. They had no idea what difficult could really look like when you pick a fight with the person who actually owns the thing you're trying to control. And the gate, the one they kept calling the community gate, it was about to become the very expensive symbol of their bad decisions. Karina did not waste time. She emailed me a draft of the letter that same afternoon and asked for my approval. I read it twice, feeling a little giddy. It was polite, but only in that razor-edged way where every sentence is a scalpel. It laid out in neat numbered points my parcel number and the paragraph from the declaration, specifically excluding it from the association. The fact that the gate was installed entirely on my property, outside any recorded easement. The pattern of harassment and overreach, demands for keys, unauthorized marketing using my gate, made-up violations, and, this part made me smile, the 20 phone calls starting at approximately 2:48 a.m. on a date she listed by calendar and time zone. A formal demand that they cease all direct contact with me, retract all fines, and purge any violations from their records. Stop routing any person or vehicle through my gate. Remove all references and photos of my gate from their materials. Refund all dues collected from me plus interest and cover my legal fees. It ended with a paragraph that basically said, if you don't fix this within 14 days, we will seek court intervention and notify the state authorities who handle common interest communities. I read that last line 3 times, then replied, send it. 2 days later, the board sent their response. I did not see it first, and instead my neighbor, Miss Elora, knocked on my door again, holding a printed email like it was a piece of gossip baked into a pie. Have you seen this? She asked. Seen what? She handed it to me. This went to the whole community mailing list. I scanned it, my heart doing that strange combination of spike and sink. Dear neighbors, it started. We want to make you aware of a situation involving a homeowner at the rear of the community who is refusing to comply with community security policies and is obstructing association functions. Due to this homeowner's actions, we may incur substantial legal expenses that could result in increased assessments. We ask for your patience as we work to resolve this unfortunate matter. The email went on to say that a rogue property owner was blocking emergency access and refusing reasonable requests for gate keys. It claimed that the board had no choice but to defend the community's rights and that this individual's selfish refusal might harm property values for everyone else. They did not use my name, but they didn't have to. Everyone in the neighborhood knew there was only one house behind the gate. Karina called me an hour after I forwarded it. Well, she said, sounding almost cheerful, they really don't know when to stop digging, do they? They sent that to every homeowner, I said. Is that okay? Okay for us, she said. Not great for them. That's a mass communication making false claims about you and blaming you in advance for assessments. We can add defamation and retaliation to the list. Also, they just admitted in writing that they're tying potential assessment increases to their dispute with you. That's not going to go over well with the people actually paying those assessments. She told me not to respond to anyone who might ask questions, at least not yet. Let them stew for a minute, she said. We're moving to Phase 2. Phase 2 looked like this. Karina sent a second letter, this time to the association's council. Yes, they'd lawyered up. And to the management company. In it, she attached the community-wide email and politely, but firmly, tore it apart. She pointed out that there was no community security policy that applied to me because I'm not subject to the declaration. There was no emergency access being blocked since the main entrance is wide open and the fire department has its own master key system, which I had already been added to. The board's mischaracterization of me in that email, both factually and in tone, was inappropriate and had already caused reputational harm. At the end, she added a line that was basically her version of a mic drop. If this matter is not resolved promptly, we will seek a declaratory judgment, damages, and attorney's fees. We also reserve the right to notify appropriate state agencies about the association's conduct, including but not limited to misrepresentation of amenities and harassment of non-member property owners. The association's attorney responded 3 days later. It was a long letter, longer than anything I would have had the patience to read without help. Karina summarized it for me on the phone. Short version, she said, they're doubling down. They're claiming that even though your parcel was originally exempt, it's functionally part of the community and should be treated as such. They also hint that by paying dues, you acceded to the declaration, which is not how any of this works, and they agree to stop using your gate in marketing, small victory, but insist they still have a right to access it for community purposes. How is that a right? I asked. Just because they say words with confidence? Basically, she said. They're relying on bluster and the hope that you'll blink. They also say your complaint about the late-night phone calls is overstated and that contacting you repeatedly was necessary for community safety. That's ridiculous, I said. They wanted drunk wedding guests to have a shortcut. Oh, I know, she said, and a judge will know too, so she filed. The complaint she drafted and filed in the county court asked for a declaratory judgment that my parcel was not subject to the declaration and that the association had no authority over my property or my gate. An injunction prohibiting them from demanding keys or codes, routing traffic through my gate, interfering with my contractors or guests, representing my property as part of their common amenities. Damages for harassment, wrongfully collected assessments, emotional distress from months of aggressive contact and late-night calls, defamation from the community-wide email, attorney's fees and costs, On top of that, she drafted a complaint for the state agency that deals with common interest communities in our state, and another one for the Consumer Protection Division of the State Attorney General's office, focusing on the false gated community advertising and the fact that they'd been billing someone who wasn't actually a member. I'll be honest, I had a moment where I wondered if I was taking it too far. I'm not a person who loves conflict. I like my quiet. I like my coffee on the porch in the mornings without thinking about whether some board member is timing how long my trash can sit by the curb. But then I'd remember picking up my phone in the dark, hearing Marla demand my keys at 3 in the morning, and the spike of adrenaline that kept me awake the rest of that night. I'd look at the folder of emails accusing me of obstruction, the letters threatening liens, the ridiculous confrontation where they tried to block my landscaper, and I'd think, no, they did this. They chose make this a fight instead of read the documents and knock it off. The lawsuit landed like a meteor in their little world. I know this because within a week my email and mailbox exploded. Not with more board messages, those went straight to Karina now, but with indirect fallout. One neighbor, a woman named Priya who lived 2 streets over and whom I'd only waved to a couple of times, caught me at the mailbox. "Are you the one they're fighting with about the gate?" she asked. My instinct was to say, "Sorry, I can't talk about ongoing litigation," but I also knew that silence would let the board control the story. "Yeah," I said carefully, "there's a disagreement. I'm handling it through an attorney." Her eyebrows shot up. "Good," she said, "because that email they sent was wild. My husband's a contracts guy, and even he said it sounded like they were trying to scare everybody into supporting them." A day later, another neighbor, an older guy named Mark who always walked a tiny dog that looked like a dust mop, waved me down. "Hey," he said, lowering his voice, "just so you know, some of us have been asking to see the budget. They told us a big chunk of next year's increase is legal expenses for security matters. If that's about your gate, I'm not thrilled about paying for their nonsense." I told him he might want to attend the next board meeting and ask some hard questions. He did. I did not attend that meeting. I didn't need to. But more than one person sent me recordings afterward. State law requires them to keep their meetings open to members, and a few homeowners took full advantage. From what I pieced together, the scene was not pretty. 10 minutes after the patrol cars left, there was a knock at our door. I tensed, but it was just Penny. She slipped inside, shut the door, and blew out a breath as Isla dropped into a chair. "They called 911 and said there was a domestic disturbance," Isla said. I called our attorney Maribel and walked her through everything. The 48-hour evict your wife notice, the threats to treat Isla as a trespasser, and now the invented emergency. Claiming a domestic disturbance when there wasn't one could be a crime, she said. She promised a complaint to the police department, letters ordering the HOA to preserve records, and told us to write statements while it was fresh. In the covenants, I'd found a clause letting owners force a special meeting if enough of us signed a petition. It had felt theoretical before. Now, it was the plan. I printed signature pages and went door to door. Every knock turned up a story, bubbles, ramps, chalk, and the same line. I thought I was the only one. Within a week, we had more signatures than we needed. Word of the meeting spread. Meanwhile, the police opened an internal review of the 911 call. A city letter confirmed what we already knew. The caller had been cited for misuse of emergency services. The HOA's careful statement never named Lorraine, but nobody needed the name. At the special meeting, the clubhouse was packed. I held up the letter demanding I evict my unauthorized wife and told the room how the board tried to control who lived in my home and weaponized 911 when I refused. Neighbors shared their own run-ins. When the ballots were counted, the result was clear. The entire board was recalled and replaced with me, Penny, and Harlan. Under the settlement that followed, the association's insurer covered our legal fees and the HOA adopted limits. No calling law enforcement over rule violations without a real threat, protection for spouses living together, disability accommodations, and a ban on anyone who misuses 911 from serving on the board. We hired a new management company and set up an appeals process. Every owner got a sheet titled, "What They Can't Do." Life under the new board is boring. Kids draw chalk. Harlan's ramp stays. Basketball echoes at dusk. We still have rules, but now we also have boundaries. And a reminder that our homes aren't just lines in someone else's binder. The HOA gave me 48 hours to evict my wife. Instead, they lost their power and the illusion that a letterhead lets you run someone's life. I kept my home, my marriage, and the certainty that next time we'll all push back sooner. Friends, thank you. See you soon.